there's plenty of things to do, and to be isolated at home complaining about the state of the world is not going to be very effective when you can get out and influence other people. And that doesn't have to take the form of an argument. It doesn't have to take the form of being aggressive. It's often just getting in conversations with people, putting your point of view forward, talking about these freedom-related issues, and making sure that your friends and neighbors know, because a lot of them probably don't.
I've always been that guy that's yelled at the steering wheel, yelled at the windshield, didn't like the direction of my country under this administration or even the previous ones. You've been watching it slowly descent where I didn't feel comfortable with it. And I'm a staunch conservative. I've always voted conservative, but this country isn't what it was, when at a time I remember earlier.
And I wasn't hearing that on the CBC. That's the thing that was confusing me. I was hearing these doctors that sounded like they had received corporate media training. Well, Jim, that's an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked it. That's not what a doctor sounds like. That's what somebody who's selling something sounds like.
May 26th to May 28th was the second time Victoria saw a Reclaiming Canada conference put on by We Unify. We're going to tell you what went down. Andrea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and beside me is a familiar face. We've interviewed you a few times, Jeremy Maddock from Victoria, who's also an organizer of a very large freedom conference that took place in Victoria called the Reclaiming Canada Conference. Thanks for being back on Rebel News.
Thank you.
Now, for people who maybe didn't see our footage last year, tell us a little bit about what the vision was behind this conference.
This is really just about bringing people together in the freedom movement, the thought leaders, those who have ideas and perspectives, and cross-fertilizing those ideas. So we've had 6 panels. We had yesterday a media panel and an activism panel. Today, which is the Saturday, we just had an education panel as well as a politics panel. And tomorrow we'll be dealing with health issues and legal issues. So it's bringing together doctors, lawyers, political candidates, both elected and aspiring, and those who want to be active, whether it's through telling the truth in media, such as Rebel does, or whether it's getting involved in a more activist capacity and trying to change the world through direct action. So there's really a little bit of everything here, and bringing all those people together under one roof is really exciting.
Let's show you a peek of that.
I was seeking. That's what I was doing. I wasn't building something for my own personal aspirations. I was seeking solutions for my family, for my community, and for my extended community, and for Canada. And in that, I've had the opportunity to weave my voice with many amazing individuals, many who are sitting here in this room. I've been able to give my platform over to them to give voice to the things that are being censored and the things that are not being talked about in mainstream, the things that are being labeled as conspiracy theory and being fact-checked.
January 15th, as everybody knows, the cross-border mandates became a law for unvaccinated truck drivers to cross the international border. That affected my life. I felt the pressure of that going forward, and I gave to the pressure, and I got vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated with the card. But a lot of the people that I work with in this industry didn't want to go that far. We lost a tremendous amount of good quality drivers in this industry, a lot of which retired. A majority of them then stuck to just Canada. So for the last year, the mandates have been still in place. They were still in place under the Biden administration. It made it difficult. We were short drivers, and it's really hurt the last while. The mandates have since been lifted. We're back to normal per se, but those drivers that retired or shut down aren't coming back. We've lost that quality of driver now in the industry. That was when I decided to put a voice to it, I guess. I've always been that guy that's yelled at the steering wheel, yelled at the windshield, didn't like the direction of my country under this administration or even the previous ones. You've been watching it slowly descent where I didn't feel comfortable with it. And I'm a staunch conservative. I've always voted conservative, but this country isn't what it was, at a time I remember earlier.
I had volunteered for the Canadian COVID Care Alliance because since I left journalism about 20 years ago, I've been working in a business where I have to go to medical conferences and listen to doctors who treat chronic illnesses and get people off the medications. A lot of what they do is they get a list of their symptoms and then they say, give me a list of your meds. And then they say, geez, they're on all these meds as a side effects, so let's get you off them. And these doctors all speak the same way. And their words are very spare. There's an economy of language. There's an amazing confluence between language and science that exists in medicine. And I wasn't hearing that on the CBC. That's the thing that was confusing me. I was hearing these doctors that sounded like they had received corporate media training. Well, Jim, that's an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked it. That's not what a doctor sounds like. That's what somebody who's selling something sounds like. That's what a politician sounds like on their second election. The first one, they're a regular person, but after they get in, they go through the corporate media machine and they learn how to conduct interviews in a way that spins and spins and spins. And we used to look out for them. We used to try to tell them to tone it down in the pre-interview on the CBC radio and television where I worked. You would say, just dial that down a little bit. Take about 15% off that, and you'll sound a little better on the television. And that's all I was hearing.
I was a mom, a healthcare worker in two capacities. I worked in the optical industry, and I was also a caregiver, fired for not jabbing. And I started ranting about the things that no one was talking about. So it seemed Black Lives Matter was one of those things. I was raised to believe that, obstacles are something we overcome and that my skin was a gift from God. And the message was that I'm helpless, I should be pitied, and that everybody who's white around me is a problem. So I spoke about those things. I was speaking about Derek Sloan, and when I say speaking, I mean ranting on Facebook, and that's basically how Rebel News found me. And then, boy, did COVID take over my journalism. It was such a full-time job to give the public the other side of the story to the COVID narrative. And I think myself and Tamara Ugolini at Rebel News were probably doing that the most all the time. And it was such a blessing to be able to work for an independent media outlet that would be able to give the voice to the people at protests who were being labeled extremist, racist, misogynist, everything Trudeau said, really. But there's another side of the story that in 2023 has become my main journalistic beat. And if you're following it, it is the horrible agendas targeting our children.
You are preventing the progress of tyranny in our country. You are the bulwark. You're standing up against that. When you attend these conferences, when you communicate with your MLAs and your MPs, when you hand out brochures, when you deliver brochures and put them in mailboxes, when you forward emails to friends and family and colleagues, when you are doing these things, it is those small acts that make the tyranny crumble.
Now, what, if anything, do you feel are the main differences with what our freedom fight is today since a year has passed?
Well, I think that the most visible aspects of it have faded into memory for a lot of people. We don't have most people wearing masks or having vaccine passports to get into venues. So for a lot of Canadians, they say, well, what are you really concerned about anymore? The crisis is past. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you see that there's all kinds of things that we do need to be concerned about. Most importantly, from my perspective, our freedom of speech. We have, for example, Bill C-11, which is threatening to completely undermine the internet as a free, unregulated marketplace of ideas and turn it into the equivalent of a public broadcaster. So that will dramatically shift the conversation and the kinds of conversations that can happen online. Then we've also got Bill 36, which is going to fundamentally alter the way that medical professionals are regulated in this province and make them essentially beholden to the government of the day, to the political party of the day. And these things are happening without much debate, without much public fanfare, and without much visibility to the average person. So I guess the role of We Unify is to try and make those things visible, make those things known, and bring people together to discuss how we can resist these impositions on our freedoms.
Right. It is a discussion, and you guys are nonpartisan, is my understanding. It seems like a lot of stuff is happening all at once. And since you are having these discussions and getting these minds together, what is maybe one or two steps you think people can take, even from their own home, if they want to start getting involved?
Well, you can come to weunify.ca and sign up for our mailing list. Start getting our newsletter. It'll just give you a sense of what's going on. You can't do anything about what's happening if you don't know what's happening. So just following our activities, following alternative media, finding reporters and podcasters and that who are telling the truth and putting the word out there about freedom-related issues. Follow as many people like that as possible, because it's so important just to not be in the dark. And then engage in your community, whether that's with a freedom group like We Unify, or whether that's just in your community generally, your church, your Rotary Club, your local community center, or sporting activities. There's plenty of things to do, and to be isolated at home complaining about the state of the world is not going to be very effective when you can get out and influence other people. And that doesn't have to take the form of an argument. It doesn't have to take the form of being aggressive. It's often just getting in conversations with people, putting your point of view forward, talking about these freedom-related issues, and making sure that your friends and neighbors know, because a lot of them probably don't.
Well, there's some good advice for you, and there's a lot more to come on Rebel News about what happened during this conference. We've linked We Unify's website down in the description box below on the link for this report. And also you can find some more of what happened basically in the conference. Thanks for being on Rebel News.
Thank you very much, Drea.
If you appreciate this report and all of our coverage of the Reclaiming Canada conference, please consider chipping in to cover our expenses to get here. We had to take a very expensive ferry. By we, I mean myself and Alex, who's behind the camera. We also had to get an Airbnb to stay here, and all of that is expenses that we rely and hope that you will help us cover. So if you'd like to chip in a few bucks to do so, please go to rebelfieldreports.com and chip in what you can. We appreciate your support.